Welcome to Seen and Heard with Dr. Cathy Wield, a series which explores the life and stories of ex-boarders and how they've fared since leaving school. Whether they've had a good, positive or bad and negative experience of boarding school, everyone has a story to tell. And one thing's for sure, the past is a way of shaping us into the people we are today. Seen and Heard is a committed group of ex-boarding school pupils who understand the unique institutional experience of being raised in these environments and who believe in the power of connection and its ability to heal. And I'm an ex-boarder myself and have documented my own recovery journey in my memoir, Unshackled Mind, a doctor's story of trauma liberation and healing. But today I have the pleasure of interviewing Chris Reilly, who is a recently retired shipbroker after 48 years in the city. Welcome, Chris. For all intents and purposes, you look as though you've had a very successful career since leaving school, Chris. But you're here to tell us more about yourself.
Well, thank you, Cathy. It's great to see you. Great to see you. We've had quite the journey ourselves, haven't we, over the last couple of years. Well, success is an interesting concept, isn't it? Because by whose definition? And I think in conventional terms, I've had a successful career. I had a successful time at school and passed seamlessly from school to university, to Oxford, and then from there into the city, which is a well-trodden path, no question about it. If anybody had told me when I started working in the city that I would be there for 48 years, I would have told them they were stark staring mad, because the sheer thought filled me with horror. But there it is. That's what I've done. So yes, conventionally, fine. I became managing director of a firm in the city, senior partner in an international firm based in Paris. I've travelled the world. I've spoken at conferences. I've met wonderful people, been to wonderful places, had lots of lunches and dinners, and finally managed to retire. Interestingly, I think I was kind of postponing retirement because I wasn't quite sure what that was going to mean in terms of being left to my own devices or just being at home, and I think then looking a little bit beneath the surface, I see evidence of a survival strategy. Well, in Nick Duffell's definition of a survival strategy, workaholic.
Do you want to talk a bit more about what that means? There are people listening who might not know.
Well, I suppose one of the things that boarding school did for me was to teach me how to focus totally on a path and say, this is the way you've got to go, because it was predefined, and stick to the path and everything will be fine. Deviate and there lies chaos and who knows what might happen, So kept my head down, worked hard, and rose through the ranks and, was able to depart finally with my head held high, so to speak.
So
but
tell me,
way.
Well, when you were sent off to boarding school, did you know that this is how you were going to end up?
Oh, absolutely not. No, not at all. And I think I was sent away at 9 to my prep school, and I was there 9 till 13, and it was only half an hour from home, but I still only saw my parents like 3 times a term. And it was called a prep school, I suppose, preparing boys for the real thing, but I'm not sure that it did really. It was academically okay, lots of outdoor activities, and in a way it was, I was lucky, I suppose, in the sense that a lot of it was actually quite good fun. I was only beaten twice by the headmaster for disobedience. So there was a rebellious streak which surfaced from time to time, and it has done throughout my life. And the real shock was going from there to the next school, age 13, because I was head boy at my prep school, and I'd managed to get a scholarship into the next place, which I was told I had to do because my elder brother had his name down for one school, the same one my father went to, and hated it. And he was 6 years older than me. So when it came to me, Dad said, well, I think we better find a different school for you.
So had they always planned on sending you away to boarding school? I assume so.
Certainly my father did. My mother is a bit of a mysterious figure in this. Because I don't think, left to her own devices, she wouldn't have made that decision. But for Dad, it was absolutely the only way to go. And I think that was because it was the only way he knew. And there was this, first of all, it was a norm. It was socially the normal thing to do. I mean, imagine they would have had real problems explaining to people if they hadn't sent their children to boarding school. And there were 4 of us, And there was an aspect of, I think, sort of social upward mobility that they were after as well. And maybe that they wanted their children to have advantages which they didn't have themselves, especially as their own lives were, and when they were young, were interrupted by the Second World War. And my mother should have gone to university and didn't. She became a nurse instead. And so I think they both had this feeling after the war that they should send the children to boarding school. Mum probably a bit more hesitant about it, I would think. But Dad, no, that's the way it's got to be. Mm-hmm. So the only way I could get into the next school, to my public school, was if I got a scholarship. So I was told I had to work hard, and yes, I got the scholarship and I got in. But that was arriving there was a real shock because, first of all, it was a lot further from home. I was 200 miles away from home. And also it was so overwhelmingly terrifying and full of older boys who basically are young men by the time they're 18, who were, terrifying. I'm going to close that a bit because the sun has actually, believe it or not, finally emerged. And I'd gone from being head boy at my prep school to being an absolute nobody. And well, not a nobody, but right at the bottom of the heap. Yeah. And that was very difficult, very, very difficult. And I so wanted to conform. I so wanted to be with the in crowd, and I so wanted to be accepted and loved.
Were you missing home by that stage, or were you very used to being away?
I think I was missing home, yes, but I was missing love and affection more than anything else. And yes, I still associated that with home, although home was a lot further away. So that was a difficult experience, but I sort of battled through it. But my early years there, age 13, 14, 15, were difficult. Mm-hmm. And then I went through another great rebellion, nearly got thrown out for getting involved in an explosives scheme, which...
What?
There was a group of us that, well, one of them was a chemist. Well, he was doing A-level chemistry, and he knew about how to make explosive materials because he'd researched it himself. And we got into trouble, and we got caught. Well, there were a few sort of mysterious bangs going off around the school grounds in the middle of the night. And the headmaster called us. Somebody shopped us, dobbed us in, And the headmaster called us all in. I think there was 5 of us. And basically said, "You're all boys for whom I have the highest regard, and you've done something very foolish. So I'm going to put you in a 4-hour detention, and you will write an essay on what I intend to put into life and what I hope to get out of it." We were suitably chastened, and then I discovered Jesus and became a God squatter. And
did you?
So I was a good boy for my last couple of years there.
Yeah, it's funny because I did the same thing.
What?
And
Not explosives.
no, not with the explosives, but yeah, you know, and I kind of, when I look back, I think, well, I was right for it, really, because, you know, an unhappy, vulnerable boarding school child, and who with low self-esteem. So, you know, becoming a born-again Christian was just the thing for me.
Absolutely.
And I mean, you know, when I look back, I think, well, it did at least give me a purpose, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's what I found.
probably,
It gave me a clarity, gave me a
yeah.
clarity for a while. And then, I mean, that all fell apart when I got to university.
Like, it took me years for it to fall apart, but it did.
Well, I can tell you exactly why it fell apart because, I mean, I'm not sticking here to a sort of strict timeline in the narrative, but I did get into Oxford, and at the end of my first year, or was it second year? Anyway, I got married at the age of 20 because my girlfriend then became pregnant, and we had a big decision to make about whether to go ahead with the birth of a child, or which for her parents and for mine, we thought that would be totally unthinkable, because we're there to, we got to Oxford, both of us. We're there to study and succeed and shine and be totally brilliant. And instead of which, we thought long and hard about it and said, well, no, actually, we're going to have the baby. So we did. And we both graduated eventually, amazingly. Washing nappies sort of in shifts between spending a couple of hours in the library studying existentialism and theoretical linguistics and history and whatever. So that was an adventure. That was a massive adventure. And then came the big question once we graduated was, what about a career? Do we need a career? Do I need a career? And we were quite sort of idealistic then. We were very, very strong on child development and our baby, and making sure that he was brought up in a liberal way and not confined and not channeled the way we'd been through our school time. But we needed to support ourselves, and so there wasn't any question of further qualifications or anything like that, or studying the law or whatever. And I just fell into this position in the city as a shipbroker, which I'd never heard of shipbroking before. Most people never have. But it was sort of sold as travel the world, meet interesting people, meet ship owners, act as an intermediary in arranging cargoes for ships and ships for cargoes. So I thought, yeah, well, that sounds really interesting. Yeah. Use my languages, because that's what I studied, was German and French. And I thought, yeah, okay, I'll give that a go. And then 48 years later, I retired. But our marriage lasted 10 years, 11 years, ended in divorce. Both of us were drinking too much. I certainly was. I was spending long periods not in the home, either just working late or out with clients or traveling abroad with the job. And that must have put a huge strain on my wife. And the other thing that really coloured, I mean, we had a wonderful time as well. We did have a wonderful time. We're still very good friends, so I'm happy about that. But serial infidelities, and it was the early 1970s, so it was experimental and exciting, and we were young and game for anything. But in the end, that was quite destructive, because trust was trust was shaken,
Yeah.
and ultimately we couldn't continue. So that's, I think, one of the themes, and I didn't connect it then with boarding school education at all. Not at all. The boarding school education for me still at that time was, well, yeah, there were bumps in the road, but it was a good school, and I'm proud of what I achieved, and it was the best education going. And
Did you know other people who had been to the same school?
Yeah, and absolutely, and we stayed friends, and some of them still are. We meet from time to time, with slightly different takes on the experience, I must say. There's one of my friends whose parents were divorced, and parents living in different countries, and he was shuttled backwards and forwards between the two, and he only came to my public school, I think, at aged 15 or 16. And I've talked to him about it, and he said, well, actually, it gave him stability, which he didn't have anywhere else. Yeah. So he kind of settled into it and enjoyed it. So I think it's important to say that not everybody's experience of boarding school is the same. And some children are more robust in dealing with the challenges and more secure, more grounded than others. I think my experience was difficult in particularly the years 13, 14, 15, because I wasn't secure, and I did have no self-esteem, and I was vulnerable, and therefore found it difficult. And my coping strategy in those particular years was to seek affection and approval and attachment from the older boys. Actually, I'm going to rephrase that, because I didn't seek it. I was sought out.
Right.
And I think there are certain. Well, I'll tell you something now, which I think will kind of inform the whole narrative of my life after boarding school. I was certainly vulnerable when I arrived, and certain older boys took a shine to me, and I was a pretty boy. I was, and I was singled out and for attention, and I succumbed. And it's only very recently that I have realized actually what was going on. And that's through everything that I've been through in the last few years with the workshops, the boarding school workshop, and our retreats, making the film with Piers Cross and the rest of the team. And even then, it wasn't clear to me what had happened. And just recently, I've been in correspondence with my MP about the film. And the last time I wrote to her was just a couple of weeks ago, and I said, just to remind her that it was going to be screened in the House of Commons, and hoping she would attend. And she couldn't, unfortunately, but she was very interested in the work and said, this is very important. And I ended my message by saying, I am a boarding school survivor myself. And then I thought long and hard about it before I actually typed it. I said, and I was sexually abused while I was at school. And it was the first time in my life that I had put it in those words to myself, let alone writing it to somebody else. And before I actually typed it and pressed send, I was thinking, God, is that true? is that actually true? Wasn't I complicit? Didn't I ask for it? Wasn't I, because I responded to these approaches, and surely that makes me complicit and all the rest. And the moment I thought that, I thought, but this is what victims all over the place think.
Yeah.
And all those girls and young women that are abused and raped, and that narrative, it's your fault, it's absolutely your fault. You were asking for it,
Yeah.
I suddenly realized it was a real light bulb moment, absolutely astonishing. I thought, no, rubbish. I was abused. I was, however you want to put it, groomed, taken advantage of, predated on. Was it. And since I've used those words, I suddenly felt really comfortable with that concept, and I've realized that shame that I've carried all my life doesn't belong to me.
Good.
It's absolutely amazing. So that, I think, then led to the rebellions in various different ways, disobedience, bucking the system. And when I got to the top of my public school, I was extremely angry about it. I didn't really make that connection directly. It was, no, I'm just angry about what I see, the behaviour I see in some of my peers, and how they are ogling the new boys and making, salacious remarks, and with no idea. The older boys had no idea what that makes that boy feel, and that gulf between 14 and 18 is enormous at a boarding school. With boys, they're no longer boys, they're young men, and they knew what they were doing. And they weren't necessarily homosexual either. I think some of them were, but it was, you're in a single-sex boarding school, confined.
Yeah.
So what do you expect? There were no girls. The girls were from another planet, never to be seen. So it's an inevitable consequence of single-sex boarding, as far as I'm concerned. And I got extremely angry about it. And I went to the headmaster and I got up a petition. I said, we need more contact with local girls' schools. And I was furious, but I hadn't connected it. And I knew what my own experience was, but I still hadn't made that connection in myself, that's what I was fighting. And
well, it's shame, isn't it? And shame silences your internal voice.
Yeah. Yes. But I think then, now that I realised that, and I mean, Cathy, honestly, I'm 72, for heaven's sake. This has taken me nearly 60 years to get to this point, which I find absolutely astonishing, but better late than never. But that then informed the rest of my, certain aspects of my behaviour through the rest of my life.
Yeah.
The workaholism, alcoholism, infidelity, the inability to, while maintaining a veneer of sort of normality and consistency and holding everything together outwardly.
Respectability.
Yes, respectability, being calm and coping and all that. But there's this undercurrent of tremendous turmoil, which I hadn't identified. And that only changed really because now I've been married to my second wife for 36 years. And a few years ago I had an affair, and that very nearly destroyed that marriage completely. And that was what made me stop and think, what on earth is going on? Why am I doing this? Why? I just didn't understand.
Yeah.
And that was what led me to, first of all, to seek proper counselling, and then to go on the boarding school survivors workshop, which was transformative as far as I'm concerned. Absolutely transformative. And
So
then
up
from there,
until that time, before you went to the boarding school survivors workshop, had you it in the back of your mind thought about boarding school much, or had it been parked?
I'd thought about it in terms of good memories and the positives, and
Right.
because there were positives, obviously. I did lots of stuff. I was a drama.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, drama's great because you can be somebody else.
Yes.
And I think if there's one thing that boarding school trains you for fantastically, it is being able to lead a double life.
Right.
And have a secret life going on inside which nobody else knows about.
Can you tell me a bit more about that? How you see that, not your secret life, but how you came to that conclusion?
Well, I think the workshop helped me with that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because that was bringing things to the surface which
Mm-hmm.
had been sort of lurking in the shadows for years, for decades, which I don't think I'd consciously suppressed them. I just thought they were kind of there, but were not part of my sort of conscious awareness, really. Because I was still, trapped in that classic boarding school mode of thought, which is, well, my parents sent me away and they know what's best. Therefore, if I'm not thoroughly enjoying it, must be something wrong with me.
Yeah.
And
So familiar.
It's so familiar, isn't it? And that stayed with me all my life. Not just about boarding school, but about working in the city and being surrounded by all these greedy so-and-sos whose only interest in life was money and alcohol. You know what I mean? This sort of venal lifestyle, which I always instinctively kicked against, but I was still part of it.
Yeah.
So again, it was, it must be, the reason I'm not wholeheartedly in this world is because there's something wrong with me. I can't.
Me. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's this isolationist thing, isn't it, that you develop at school because you've learned that, it's so important to fit in.
Yeah.
You mustn't let people see what you're really like.
Exactly.
Because if they did, and actually that feeling is pretty much held by lots and lots of people all over the world in all situations, and yet I think there's something very tangible about this imposter syndrome that seems to stick to boarders in particular.
Yeah.
Because we're trained into it at such a young age.
We're trained into it at a young age, and it's a very successful training.
It is very successful
because it works. It does what it sets out to do, and that's why I think I reached a point in the last few years where I don't really criticize the schools anymore. I don't criticize my school because it only did what it set out to do and what basically was being required of it by parents. And the board of governors or trustees or whatever. This is what it was supposed to do. So how can you criticize that? What you can criticize, and what I do criticize, is the thinking behind it, behind the system, which says sending your children away at a very young age to be brought up in an institution is the good thing to do. And I forget who said it, but you won't find a psychologist or educationalist or anybody who says it's a good idea to send your kids away really young. Who's going to say that? Nobody. So it's a perversion. It's a perversion of what education should be all about, and it's a distortion of bringing up a child, of educating a child, bringing out of a child its full potential. And children are so creative and energetic and full of life, and the boarding school largely it doesn't snuff it out, but it channels it in really quite strange ways.
Mm.
And then
It kind of almost boundaries creativity, doesn't it?
Mm.
It sort of it stops expanding widthways in your creative sphere.
Yes, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. And I mean, at my school, the art was amazing. A fantastic art school, carpentry shop, drama, beautiful theatre, and wonderful grounds and incredible buildings. And there were boys that produced fantastic art. I mean, amazingly creative, wonderful stuff, you know. I don't know what happened to them afterwards. I've got no idea. But there were actors and poets and writers and, you know. So it wasn't that you couldn't be creative, but you could be creative within certain limits.
Yeah. What was acceptable, I suppose.
Yeah. Yes, what was acceptable. And you know, I went back to my school last year because I had a letter from the trustees or whatever, I can't remember, saying that they were merging. My public school was merging with a bunch of prep schools, 5 or 6 prep schools, in order to meet the headwinds of financial challenges and political challenges, right? Because they could sense them, and that this new combined unit aimed to be thought leaders in pedagogy, character development, and pastoral care.
Uh-huh.
And I picked up on that because I thought, pastoral care? That wasn't a term that existed in the early 1970s. Certainly not in a school context. May have been in the church or whatever.
Yeah.
So I immediately wrote to the headmaster and said, I'd really like to learn more about what you understand by pastoral care. So he granted me a meeting, an interview. I had 45 minutes with him, one-to-one, last year. And he explained what the school does in terms of pastoral care. And there are mentors and peer group support at every year level, and all the staff are trained in safeguarding and da-di-da-di-da. And it was good answers. I mean, and it was serious. I think it was sincere. We have to raise the bar. There's more we can do, and we have to do it. And fine, it was all good. But then, and I came away sort of, place has changed. It's changed since I was there 60 years ago. But what was missing, I think, was the care. You can't substitute a family unit for an environment which is full of strangers telling you what to do and follow the rules, however caring they are and however sensitive they are to an adolescent.
It's still an institution, isn't it?
It's still an institution, and you're confined. And the system hasn't really changed, which is you've got the cult leader at the top, the headmaster, and then his sort of senior acolytes who are all stuck. And they delegate powers of authority to senior boys, to the prefects, who are then have to implement and administer the rules of the system. And that's where the weakness is, because a lot of those senior boys, although they've been elevated to positions of authority, it's not really their authority.
Boys.
And they're boys. So they're only carrying out, instructions which they've been given. So
So
Because
children
the
are
real
bringing
breakdown, and that's what, what hit me was
yeah,
that in that gap, I fell into that gap between arriving a new boy, what the hell's going on? Totally overwhelmed, and this senior boy level, and all kinds of stuff goes on there, which I'm sure is still unseen.
yeah.
And how do you? I don't see an easy way of dealing with that in a boarding school environment. And I was told, parents have much more access to, the boys have much more access to their parents than they did in your day. And they have mobile phones and they have laptops and everybody's more in touch. The parents are much more involved. And well, yeah, fine if they're sort of within, half an hour's driving distance, but not if they're 200 miles away. And I didn't feel satisfied with that explanation. And I did ask, how do you cope with the emotional baggage that a boy brings to the school age 13 if he's already been boarding since 7, 8, 9, And I didn't get a straight answer to that, really.
No.
The answer was, oh, well, that doesn't really happen anymore because very few of our intake have boarded before. Oh, really? Really? And I did go back and check that. And yes, prep schools now have a lot of flexi boarding and weekday boarding, home at the weekend. Okay, but still,
it's interesting, isn't it, that even though you're right, there's obviously this move to stop full boarding from a young age, but why is everybody still wanting to do this? Why do they feel the need to send their children away from home?
I think it's quite simple, really. It's about buying privilege, buying social status for your child. Yeah. And you can justify that to yourself as a parent by saying, I'm giving my child a leg up. I'm giving my child the opportunity to advance in society and reach a position of importance, which they wouldn't possibly have otherwise. And it's part of the marketing of the schools as well, because they're businesses, that this is what you get. This is what you pay for, is character development and discipline and academic achievement and sporting achievement and a well-rounded character. Your boy becomes a well-rounded character. I mean, not confined to boys, by the way. Of course, no. Girls' boarding schools. Girls' boarding schools, I think, are largely mirrors of boys.
Absolutely, although they have less prestige.
They have less prestige
often less academic credentials, less opportunity.
But that goes with the
same thing. It's the same belief that this is a rung up the ladder, and I think you're right. And that's a very, very powerful motivator to parents.
It is.
And who doesn't want your child to do better than you?
Yeah, exactly.
Who doesn't want your child to do well?
And so also, the thinking is that, as we were kind of encouraged to feel at school, I think, is that you are so lucky to have this fantastic education, and just pity those poor, benighted souls out there in the wilderness who only have the state system, and how unfortunate they are. And you should be happy. You're so fortunate to be in this incredible system, and with all those advantages and all these resources and facilities, and how lucky you are, and that then you come out of that feeling, well, yeah, I definitely feel a bit superior to all these poor people that only went to state schools,
or you feel terribly guilty.
Or guilty. Well, yes, I definitely. It's a tussle between the two, I think.
Yeah.
Because the conditioning has to fight your instinctive reaction, which is something not quite right about this. Or at least that was my case.
Yeah.
I always felt not guilty. I think guilty is the wrong word. I just felt this isn't right. This is not right. And I justified my city career. Shipbroking. Nobody's heard of shipbroking. everybody's heard of insurance and banking and the rest. And that's a classic sort of destination for lots of public school boys. And when I arrived in the city, I thought, in this job, in shipbroking, it was full of people who just pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and hadn't had a private education. Some did, but not many. And most of them were just hard-working lads who'd got into the city and were, ducking and weaving and doing as well as they could. And I felt much more comfortable in that environment than I think I would have done if I'd... So I thought, again, it was a little bit of an act of rebellion. You see, I thought, no, stuff you, I'm not going to go into insurance like that. I'm happy with this sort of down and dirty, That was the way I explained it to myself. In a way, I'm quite happy with that, actually. I'm sort of happy that I did rebel. But it's only in the last few years that I've really looked at it hard, at the whole thing, and realised how fundamentally I disagree with the whole idea of trying to buy privilege. It's just wrong. It's wrong because for all the reasons we know, and as Nick Duffel explained in Wounded Leaders, what was the subtitle? The entitlement illusion, is that we were basically trained to rule. Yeah, that was what it was all about. And going back to the days of empire, it was the public schools that churned out all the administrators and enforcers and for the empire. So we were trained to suppress emotion, obviously, because how can you be disciplined in an administration if you're,
And how can you be cruel to people if you're in touch with your emotions?
That's something I
There's so
thought.
much cruelty in colonialism.
Yeah, and I do think the boarding school education does train you how to be cruel. Trains you how to be cruel because you have to suppress your own feelings to survive. Because if you're too far out of the, too non-conformist, then you can't survive in the system. So you have to conform to a degree, however rebellious you feel inside. And so you're being cruel to yourself.
Yeah.
Which then makes it much easier to be cruel to other people and unfeeling and unempathetic. So, and the evidence of that is all around us in public figures who've been public school educated.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Whether it's the church or the House of Commons, the House of Lords, the evidence is all around us. And
it certainly is.
I think, if I had one wish now, it would be to certainly abolish boarding at an early age. Unless it was, there has to be very, very persuasive reasons to put a child in care, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like being in an orphanage or fine. I mean, those are. There is a reason for certain people, certain children, to be housed in certain types of institution, but to ban it on if it's only to buy privilege.
Well, and also I think it does actually bring into consideration the fact that children who are unfortunate enough to not be able to stay in their family homes, where they have to, where they're taken out, for instance, by social services, etc. Everybody who's got a heart has empathy for those children.
Yes.
They, it must be devastating and awful, however difficult it is. And here we are condoning a system which does exactly that for money, under the delusion that this is a good thing. So, it just doesn't make any sense, does
It
it?
doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense. It only makes sense if you understand the goal, which is the power and privilege, control, which is, I don't think it's not a worthwhile goal. So I have ended up, I think, in a much clearer place than I have been for a long time. My instinctive rebellions when I was a teenager and then later
So do you
were
feel
correct in a way. I feel justified. I feel confirmed in my misgivings. And now that I can put words to those misgivings in a much clearer way.
do you feel sort of happier is the wrong word? Do you feel more fulfilled, or that you've that you've grown, I guess, as a result of your workshops, etc., and coming to terms with it?
Absolutely, Cathy. I mean, growth, yes. I found it liberating.
Okay,
I feel as
good.
though I've been liberated from all sorts of things, all sorts of dark things, which have now seen the light, and empowered. I'm actually far more. I could not be talking to you like this. I couldn't have been talking to you like this 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I absolutely wouldn't have been able to. I wouldn't have had the awareness and the understanding that I have now. So, healing wounds as well. I didn't realize how wounded I was, and it's been a healing process. And sometimes you hear people talk about healing, and it sounds a bit trite, but it's not. It's so profound, and I feel liberated from conditioning. Actually, the conditioning, which was very expensive, and my dear old pa, I mean, he put 4 of us through boarding school. I think at any one time there was maybe 3 of us in boarding school at the same time. Nearly broke him, and he used to complain, "Oh my God, this is costing a fortune." But your choice, mate. But I think he was afraid of the alternative. He wouldn't have had the courage, And I mean, one of my greatest regrets, Cathy, is my mother before she died. She died in 2008. And in her latter years, twice she asked me, were you happy at school, dear? Mm. And I, at that time, the only answer I could come up with was, "Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, no, it was great. Fantastic school. I did wonderful things there, and I succeeded, and got to Oxford, and da-di-da." So, it was wonderful. And then the second time was a couple of years later, and she asked me, did we do the right thing sending you to school? And again, I couldn't find it in myself, in my heart, to disappoint her and let her down and say, "Well, actually, no, I don't think it was a great idea." I couldn't say that. I couldn't. And in a way, I do wish now that I had been able to say it, because I'm sure now the fact that she was asking the questions means that she had worried about it, didn't think it was a great idea, and was overruled by my dad, who was quite an overruling type of chap. And he'd had a horrible experience himself.
Right.
That's the other thing. This is, what they talk about, transgenerational trauma. It cascades down the generations. Yeah. I mean, he was sent home. His parents were in India. Grandfather was a civil servant and part of the administration of the Raj, and Dad was sent home aged 7 to boarding school, and then spent the holidays with relatives that he hardly knew, and saw his parents, once in a blue moon when they came home by ship on leave, probably every couple of years. And he was ferociously independent.
Yeah.
And overbearing, because that was his survival strategy.
Yeah.
And but he was a surgeon, and in some ways a very humble man, But all the kids had to go to a boarding school,
Yeah.
in spite of his experience. And I'm sure that's a very, very common story,
I think you're right. Yeah. But what you're saying to us, which I think is very heartening, is that it's never too late to get resolution of some description, healing, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Just let's not pretend we'll carry on changing and growing, hopefully to the end of our lives. But I think there comes a time sometimes where the issues of the past are better faced.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And no, it's never too late. Never too late. When I'm 72, I'm going to be 73 this year. I don't know how much time I've got left. But who does? But I'm absolutely determined to make the most of it. And if, like by doing this, if that's helpful, if that helps somebody else to recognize something in their own experience and say, yeah, I understand that. If it resonates, then great. Then I'm happy that I've done something positive with my experience. And I wouldn't wish it on anybody.
No.
I don't regret the good things about the school. I don't regret the things that I achieved at all. On the contrary, the music training I had. I'm doing lots of music now. I'm singing in choirs, and I've just this year, one of my New Year's resolutions, I've just picked up my flute after probably 40 odd years of not touching it, and I'm struggling with it, but it's part of me. It's something I want to bring back to life.
That's so good, and it's been really good talking to you, Chris. And thank you for showing such courage and openness. I think there's something very valuable about people authentically telling their stories. None of us are perfect, and we are going to look back, and sometimes it's looking back in anger. But the fact is that we can make amends to ourselves. I think even the terrible things that have happened to us can be used, as you say, to help others in the future. And I really appreciate what you're doing. Thank you so much.
Well, and you, Cathy, I really appreciate what you're doing. You've shed so much light on your experience and psychiatry. So much. I really appreciate it. I think, as you said in the introduction, what Chris Reilly has done with Seen and Heard, it allows people who've been through boarding school to connect with others and realize that they're not alone. And it's not that they were just defective, that they were. That's not the reason they didn't enjoy it or that they suffered. It's we have our humanity urges us to connect. And the quickest way to do that is by being open about our experiences, acknowledging them, accepting them. And I'm happy to do that. And I will continue, definitely.
Good. Well, it's so good to hear you. We'll stop now and look forward to talking again.
Sure. Thanks, Cathy. Thanks very much.